Hello, and thank you for joining us. And thank you to the Utah Film Center for sponsoring this amazing event. We're so glad you're here tonight. I'm Rachael Bush, the president-elect of the League of Utah Writers, and I am joined tonight with three authors who are amazing, and I'm excited to have this discussion. I'm joined by Joann Moore, who is an author of stories that include magic and diversity. I'm also joined by Linda D. Addison, who is the first African-American to receive the HWA Bram Stoker Award, which she has won 5 times and counting, I'm sure. And Aminah Mae Safi, the award-winning Muslim American author of one of my very favorite books ever. So let's start this discussion tonight. And again, the audience, if you would like to leave comments in the comment section, please feel free to do so at any time. I'm going to start the discussion now with some questions I put together for this post-film discussion. The first question I have is for my panelists is Alice's mother insisted on her children all go to school, which went against the landlord's wishes. Do you think this was a foundation for her need to protest, kind of following in her mother's steps? Anyone?
I don't know if I have an answer to that, but I think it made me think so much about the ways that especially like women of like our grandmothers or great grandmothers generation learned this sort of, it's not a silent protest, but this sort of like steadfastness to keep family together. My grandfather was basically an activist in Iraq, and he was he liked to say a guest of the Iraqi government a few times, and I think it just made me think about the ways in which my grandmother kept all 5 of her children together, and the ways in which she did make sure that her children went to school, or the ways in which she did keep family together, that I think gets really unsung. And I think it connected back to me later when they were talking about Alice Walker bringing up memories of grandmothers and great grandmothers who had never had the ability to express their artistic potential, and the ways in which they passed on that freedom that they could never have, almost. So I think that's just where my mind always went.
Yeah, I thought about the fact that I was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first in my family to go to college and get a degree. And now it's very different. I have 8 brothers and sisters, actually 9. I just found a new brother not too long ago. But I grew up with 8 brothers and sisters, and how for us, our children, many of them have college degrees. But when I was and my mother did not even finish high school. So for me, it made me think about how in my family, in the Black community, and the family around me, having an education was a way towards more of our inner equality. It wasn't a way to change America, but it was a way to be able to have a bigger entry into it, be able to do more, to have, even if we had to fight for it, better jobs, to have more awareness and knowledge of what was going on. I also think that it's a certain kind of power that no one else can give us, because for a long time, slaves weren't allowed to even learn to read. So
something someone can't take from you, right? Like no one can take your education from you once it's in there, once you've been taught to think and yeah.
Yeah, and I thought basically, and more than just a protest, I thought she did it, to do what was right for her. This was something of what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And nobody should tell her that she couldn't do it.
Oh, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was like she was like, I won't compromise on this. This is mine. Yeah. You can't take it from me. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And education being a way for her daughter to have more options than the mother. We all often want to have that, no matter what color we are, we want our children to have more. So,
I think that's absolutely true. The film also brought up a really great question, that during the civil rights, were Black people fighting to transform the United States or to join it? I mean, how do you think the civil rights movement was like the Black Lives Matter movement, and how are they different? Because I see parallels between the two very much. Like, it doesn't feel like anything is changed all that much since then?
I don't think it's a matter of changing anything. It's a matter of being seen. You know, my career of writing is in horror and science fiction. And when I first got into it many years ago, there weren't very many Black writers in it at all. So the matter of being seen, to be recognized as equal, or I don't even think of equal anymore. I think of like there are humans and there are barely evolved humans. That's how I look at the world. So when I see somebody acting up, I'm like, ooh, I hope you get reincarnated as full human, because you are not acting it now. So I think it's a matter, for me, I think of it, that's why it's all connected, right? That's why that Black Lives Matter jazz came out of the Black community for the same reason, to want to play their own music, to be seen as valuable. So there isn't any difference to me. It's always a matter of standing up and saying, I am here, I'm equal, and I'm American. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I got a genetic breakdown. Guess what? Slave and slave owners right here, babies. So I mean, you know, just let me be an American, because this is where I'm living. This is where I was born.
That makes me think of what Joann was saying too about Alice's mother and the things she wanted to do for herself. And I think that so much of that comes down to dignity, right? And like maintaining your own dignity and your own rights as an American. That's so beautiful to think about, to be seen and to hold your head up high, like the Nina Simone "To Be Young, Gifted and Black" song, right? Like to give you that sense of pride in yourself to be seen.
Yeah.
Is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I kind of think that the fight was to be both, to be a part and to transform, because they wanted to, they were working for a vision of the world that would work for them instead of against.
Sure. Yeah.
And that, and I mean, basically, I think the BLM and the civil rights movement have that in common.
Absolutely. You know, it's just BLM, which, you know, what I really respect about that is it's standing up and saying, you know, of all the things that are struggling to be equal on, don't take our life away. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to just like you know, like that. So that concentration is just another part of being respected as a regular human being in this country.
And there's something about that I keep thinking too, about like the idea of bearing witness too, right? You're talking about writing to be seen and writing to be heard, and these movements about being seen and being heard in places, and other people needing to bear witness to what is happening in the Black community or to the Black community, that I think also ties to those ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then when Alice and Mel were married, the society, including their families, which I was surprised by. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that, because families are sometimes the worst of society, right? They didn't accept their relationship. They didn't accept their love. Do you think attitudes have changed over time toward interracial couples at all? Or do you think it's very much the same?
I think some things have changed, but go ahead, please, Joann, don't let me start every time, because I can't help myself. I'm the oldest of 9. I'm just please. Ooh, save me.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that I think it has changed in some ways, but I think the biggest part of the change is that it is out there and there is no going back. So most people just don't have a choice anymore. You know, you accept it or you don't, it's still going to be there.
You think there are still people who are very uncomfortable with?
Oh yeah, there are. There always will be.
Yeah, but and in both sides of the defense, you know. But I will say in my family, my cousin who's around my age, I think, when he married a woman who was white, no one had a blink. No one even blinked. We just were like, had a gathering, she was cool, we love her, and that's it. That's the end of the story. And like I said, I've been married twice, once to someone Black, once to someone white. So don't even start a discussion with me about this.
I would say that also the threat of physical violence isn't the same. Like I think that there was a real risk when she was talking about her marriage and her daughter and living in Mississippi during
Yeah.
that time of desegregation was
Oh yeah.
that was a real threat of not just physical violence but life-ending violence, and that's a real terror. You know, I grew up in a mixed religious mixed race household, and there were people on the white side of the family that told her she wasn't married under the eyes of God because she had married a Muslim. Yeah. But I was never physically unsafe. Like there was psychological and emotional damage, but there wasn't a physical threat of safety, and I think that has shifted a lot.
Yeah, I think that's become less. It's
Mhm.
not that it's not still there. I mean, there are places that,
Sure.
you know what?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a lot less.
I wouldn't say that's the common, like I would say that it used to probably be there were more places that you were even physically unsafe than not, and I would say that has probably definitely
Because
reversed.
I mean, even where I live at in Tucson now, and where the neighborhood I'm in is I'm a minority in this neighborhood, but no one has treated me rudely or badly
Mhm.
since I moved here from New York and in Arizona. I moved here in 2014. And it doesn't mean that there isn't some sense of, wow, really? Mohawk tattoos? But like I said, people are well enough knowing not to have a conversation unless we're going to have an inquisitive, informed conversation. I'm always up for that. But if you're going to have a non-evolved conversation, I'm not the one.
Yeah. And I live in Utah, so yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't feel a danger here, but I think my parents' parents would never even have had a chance to move here in this
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
But now I'm here. I didn't have a problem buying this house and I don't feel in danger here. But not so long ago, I'm sure that there are neighborhoods like this that would not have been true for.
Well, and not just that, but it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't have a mortgage
Thank you.
or a credit
That's true.
card.
A
Like,
credit card in their own name.
right? It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. When my husband and I bought our house 20 years ago, I wanted my name on the mortgage first because I pay the bills and manage everything. And the realtor was like, "Are you sure?" The loan officer, you want your name first? I'm like, "Yeah." And they wanted to check with him to make sure he was okay with that. And I'm like, "What? This was 20 years ago. It's not that long."
Not that long ago.
And they were, "Oh, I don't, that's not what we normally do." I'm like, "I don't care what you normally do. This is how it's going to be." So, yeah. And what shocked me really too in the movie too was those little cards they got from the Klan. I could not believe that was real. That's a real thing that happened.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Please tell me
Awesome.
that's not still happening. Is that still happening? I don't even know.
I don't
There
know,
is
but
in
I'm gonna
some
tell you
places.
this, as a writer, I go to a lot of conventions. I've gone to a lot of conventions. I've won a lot of awards and all this kind of stuff. I can still walk into a room and get a sense energetically when someone else, whether it's at the convention or a restaurant, where someone else is like, you don't belong here. And
Mm.
you know what? Not my problem, because I'm here. And now, because
Nice.
of the way things are now,
Mhm.
15, 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, it might have been different. But now, yeah, nobody can do anything about that but be uncomfortable. And energetically, I always offered This America Lead the Room. I'm here.
Oh, it's just like, I'm living rent free in your head, baby. How's it feel?
Yeah.
Nothing but love and light over
Yeah,
here.
I'm like,
You're
I'm
the one that's
here
ruining
for
your own
you.
day.
I'm here for you. I give them the look of like, you're welcome. I always smile too. I'm like,
Oh yeah. Walk in, head high, and
so
keep going.
disturbing. So disturbing. But that's my job. Somebody gotta do it.
Linda, you're cracking me up.
I love it. It's their problem, not yours, right? Like they
It
want to
sure
make it
enough
your
is,
problem,
and
and
it
it's
took
not.
me enough years to get to that. I wasn't always like that. I would find that disturbing and internalize it and have like discussions with myself. Now I'm just like, can I have another glass of wine? That's the only discussion I have. In a room where somebody's having a problem. I'm like, you know what? I understand it's difficult being you. Could you get me a glass of wine? 9 times out of 10, they do it, which is really odd.
They don't know what to
Yes,
do.
they
They
Otherwise.
don't know what to do.
They
They're
don't
just sort of
want, they
startled
don't
into
know.
better behavior.
Oh, that's
yeah.
yeah, I like that.
Try it next time. Next time
I
you're in a room
will.
and somebody's uncomfortable and you get close enough, you'll be like, could you give me a glass of water, tea?
Could you get me
They
some
just go
tea,
do
some
it. They don't
wine?
know what to
Yeah,
do.
they don't know what to do. They just weren't expecting to even talk to you, so they're really having a day. I love that. I will try it next time.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
That's like full Southern auntie right there.
But again, I wasn't born like this. This was a
Yeah.
process I had to go through to come to this. It's a happy place for Linda.
Yeah.
I ain't saying it's happy for everybody else, but that's life.
So getting back to the film, over her life.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Science
We know
crazy,
what's
right?
wrong.
Alice had a lot of partners, but she never once wanted to define her sexual orientation. And for me, I don't understand why people are so obsessed with putting people in boxes and trying to figure out what they're like and to label them, to put labels on them. Why do you think it is that our society does that? Particularly with women, they really, really just want to know where we fit. And if we don't look and act a certain way and they just can't figure us out, and it really confuses them. I don't understand. Anyone have insight on that?
Y'all don't want to start. Somebody better start talking.
Okay, well, I think it keeps them in their comfort zone. They just kind of like to they like to have a space to put you in. And so then they can, okay, we put this person here and this person there, and then they can decide, oh, I don't have to care about this box over here, but I can care about this one.
And I think it's always about the other person, right? Like what someone calls you is always a reflection of themselves. And I think when people want to label you and they want to put you in a box, it's because they're uncomfortable with some piece of themselves. They're angry with some piece of themselves, some truth. And I think that it's hard when growing up mixed, people are often trying to like, where do you go? Where do you belong? Are you this? Are you that? Are you here? Are you there? And it does. It's that same discomfort of like, they need labels, and so they put them on you because they don't feel safe inside themselves, I think, frankly. And so they try to control other people and label other people and rein you in because there's something in them that they're upset about. But it's really hard to be the target of that. I think that's what broke my heart so much about watching that part of the movie, is you're thinking about the vitriol that Alice Walker was getting for being open about her sexual partners, about being open about her lovers, about being open about the kinds of stories she wanted to tell. And she told the truth, and it made people really angry and it made them uncomfortable. And so they wanted to rein that in, and they wanted to control her and label her so that they could probably dismantle that. They didn't like that she owned her own truths and her own power in that way. I think we get really uncomfortable when women own their own power, and probably triply uncomfortable when it's Black women, or just anytime you're adding a layer of marginalization. I just think it gets worse and worse because people want that control and that hierarchy, and to feel like they are better than someone else for made up reasons.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, I have my whole life had such a curiosity about why humans behave the way they do that I've read a lot of psychology, sociology.
Just so we become writers, right?
Yeah, seriously, I still do. I mean, I'm just curious. And I think that what has been said is what happened. What I was what's so been wonderful about seeing this film and now being in this discussion is that I have read so much of everything that she's written, and it never occurred to me how organically it had inspired me to make the journey from being this shy little, bookworm who didn't talk to nobody, didn't see anything, but read everything she could from A to Z, to the person that I am today. I think that I didn't realize how much of an impact she had had on me, just willing to be herself without lines, to delegate, to denilate, to outline.
Or even the fact that she was the one that saved Zora Neale Hurston. I didn't know that until I watched this. I mean, that was such a formative book for me. And the idea that she was, not only did she write The Color Purple, not only did she tell these amazing stories, but like she was the one who preserved Zora Neale Hurston. I mean, like I was crying in that part, just thinking that like I wouldn't have gotten that book had she not just like committed in the way that she seems to commit when she goes full throttle on something and said, I'm going to save her from the archives. I'm going to save her from being disremembered the way we often just like intentionally disremember these creative geniuses that are particularly creative geniuses that are Black women.
Yeah, and
We bury their talent.
Yeah, this film, what's so wonderful about it is many ways is it just highlights places that people could go and read more. Because her books, whether it's poetry, novels, or nonfiction, she has touched so many things that were became something for her to stand up for in so many ways. And this film highlights all of those. You can't even believe it's been done in one life. I mean, it's just so amazing.
Yeah, I remember watching The Color Purple when I was a teenager, and I thought, oh my God, these women can do whatever they want. And it was so empowering because no matter what life put in their way, it was this story of overcoming and this hope. And I just listened to the book again, and it was spectacular. And I thought, it's just remarkable. It's just remarkable. But when Steven Spielberg was asked to direct it, he thought, shouldn't a Black man direct this? Wouldn't that be better? And you know, what do you think as storytellers yourselves? I mean, we're all authors. So what do you think can you tell a story from a point of view that might not be your own? Or like Quincy Jones said, you know, did you have to go to Mars to shoot, to think of ET? And he was like, oh, well, I guess not. I don't know. So do you think?
Yeah, I've been on a lot of panels talking about this subject in particular in the last 5 years in writer conferences. And my belief is this: you can write about anything as long as you approach that thing that you do not know with respect, intelligence, and curiosity. And I'll give an example. I wrote a story where I had the main character in it, and I had the story as a woman. And then I said, this is just me, because I'm like crazy like this. I was like, oh, I haven't written a main character that was in a wheelchair. I think I'm going to do that. And so it wasn't that the story needed her to be in a wheelchair. I wanted to see if I could do a character like that. So I did a lot of research. You know, I read blogs from people who were in wheelchairs, how the society sees them. So, you know, you have to treat something new with respect. And I believe he did. I mean, first of all, the movie is amazing. And he wrote, as the movie says, a letter asking her permission to do this film. So yes, it can be done, but you have to do it with respect and
Yeah, I was impressed with how he came at it like that too. I thought that was really amazing.
To see your own demons, right? Like we've all have these internalized biases. And I think that, like Alice said, you have to have a great degree of courage in your convictions to do that, to look at the darkness you've swallowed from a culture that is, you know, really aggressively tries to sort of make disabled bodies invisible, or tries to silence and create an anti-Black narrative. So I think like you have to also be willing to face those demons that you've been given that you don't necessarily know you have with you. And it can be really scary to look at the bullshit you've swallowed, pardon my language, and really look it in the eye and say, like, I'm going to let you on fire. I'm not going to let this control the story. I also think it's interesting with film too, because directors aren't the only person touching that, right? The source material is by a Black woman. You have this incredible cast filled with Black women. I would really also love to know if they like hired inclusively on the like sort of below the line on the crew and the DP, like all of these other elements. I mean, maybe not, like, I mean, the cast was, but like, I would love to see all of those other pieces of data, I guess, of like who got to tell that story that wasn't just the director too. Who he did also seem to approach it very sensitively and with a great deal of respect for what Alice Walker had done.
Yeah, because I thought, yeah, it was still her story. And he basically, all he did was bring it to the screen because it was still her story, her vision, what she knew, what she wrote.
And she was on set a lot, right?
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, I mean, we can tell other stories just because of the fact that, I mean, my friends and family are not all Black, or, I mean, I know people from all over the place. And I mean, even from here, from the East, where I'm from, and it's like my life is populated with so many different people that if I tried to stick to one, then that wouldn't show what's in my life.
Wouldn't show what the world looked like to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the whole story, that we're all humans, right? So one of the things that that he had said in the movie, which really struck me and stayed with me, is that he really connected to the part of the story where the families were separated. That really touched him. I mean, we're all humans. We all have things that are going to touch us similarly in different ways. So, you know, as Joann said, it's a matter of being human and being able to connect to that instead of closing yourself and saying you don't look or do this exactly right, then I'm not going to include you.
And it always reminds me of that sort of like maxim that sounds like sort of truth like, but I think it really is very true, which is the specific is universal, right? Like Alice Walker told a story in The Color Purple that was so specific to a time and a place and a dialect and her family that she taught, right? That she's like really thinking so specifically, and because she thought so specifically, and she thought about each character as a human being with an inner life and a rich inner life, and a great potential for hope and love and resilience. It went all around the world, right? Like that specificity made it so that it was being translated into Japanese, into the language of country folk in Japan. It was so cool, right? I mean, that's so incredible. That's such a beautiful detail. But like it could do that because it was so specific. And that's, I think, the thing that I always want to fight for is when you tell a really specific story, that's when it can be universal. Like that's when people can see themselves in it, because it's just, you let that person be exactly who they are as a human, the way Linda and Joann were talking about. Those characters come alive.
And that actually leads right into a question that we have from our audience. Thank you, Jared asked a question. So here's Jared's question. Alice did such an amazing job telling an honest story within her community, and there was so much backlash for it. Given the progression and regression of published materials nowadays, if she had written the book today, do you think she would have received as much backlash? Which again, like that surprised me. I had no idea. The book, I guess it was really after the movie came out where it reached a wider audience, and I was shocked, because just like you were saying, Aminah, this was a time frame. This was a time that was told by these were her grandparents' stories.
I wasn't shocked because I knew the journey that Toni Morrison had gone through when she started writing Black world characters and stories, and there was a big, you know, flash back at her about, you know, why are you writing about why? And she's like, because I wanna. Well, she didn't say that, but you know.
She eloquently said, I do what I want.
She said it in a much way. I mean, I have awards, but there's nothing compared to Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't shocked, because again, human psychology, and then if you dig into it, and the film got into it a little bit too, about the fact that and I don't think the reaction would be the same now, because there's a lot of stuff that has come out since then that people are not reacting the way. But that time, there was such tender wounds for the Black community, for Black men, I mean, in my parents and their parents, you did not talk about these things outside, because the outside was already beating up everybody, especially different ways. So I think that she tore the bandages off those wounds, and so did Toni Morrison in her way. And that it was a very human psychological thing. And again, if you want, you could dig into it. The movie has hinted at the fact of why Black men did that, reacted in that way, and Black women. But I do not think it would have been the same now, for sure.
I think because she paved the way for it not to have that, right?
Toni Morrison,
she took the tank hit. She took the hit. She and Toni Morrison took the hits that no one else has to take.
Samurai warrior that she is.
Yeah, I am shocked by that too. And the backlash she got about showing these families as being abusive. And you know, my dad was born in the 1920s, and he told me his dad beat him, and when he had kids he beat them. That's just what they did, and they hit their wives, and that's what was acceptable in the time. And
Yep.
things have changed, thankfully, but that's, and you know, Oprah's quote was great. She was like, this was one woman's story, it wasn't the story for everyone, get over it, just let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, that I was like, I love that quote from Oprah. Just shut up.
Just shut up about it. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a great one. It is, because, you know, again, I've been on a lot of panels in the speculative community, and one of the, in the beginning, now there are more Blacks writing, but in the beginning, and I was like, you know what? I am not all Black people writing vampire stories. I'm not them all. Y'all need to know that everybody has a different point of view, reason why, blah, 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 blah. You know, so but when you're one of the first, which I was very touched by the fact that she was the first in so many ways. It was amazing. And
She's an astronaut. She's launched herself out into space, you know?
and again, I
Built her own spacesuit and launched herself out into the atmosphere.
look and realize how much I really didn't realize that she patterned for me, so that I can do what I'm doing, you know, and more people. I can't even imagine. I can only speak for myself.
It was really resonant for me too. I mean, I have never had the success that she's had on that level. I mean, it's but you got, I mean, like, yeah, it's just to degrees of like incredible, right?
And the cost.
Yeah, what cost?
She took
At a
the
huge
hit.
cost. She took the hit.
Yeah.
But I've even seen it with the reviews of like my first book, where people get really, people get angry when you tell the truth. It's one thing I've learned. And they get angry when you show them something inside themselves they don't want to look at, and they put it out on you. And I've seen it where people have said, you know, Lulu isn't Muslim, she drinks, like she's out there being wild and being mean to her parents, and this doesn't represent the community. This isn't like, they're like, well, this is just my experience, but like, let me like list all of the ways she's not actually Muslim, which was, you know, the whole point of telling a story about a mixed race girl who doesn't know where she fits and why she might be mad about that. But yeah, but like I've seen like a very small scale similar reaction, and I just think that when you hold up a mirror, especially when you say, there's this part of our house we need to clean as a community, there's this part of our house that like isn't in order, it's uncomfortable. And I think it's really hard, especially when and I think it's really hard for Muslims in this day and age, because we have this very fresh wound of 9/11 and all of the Islamophobic trauma that comes right after, right? Like that happened when I was 14. So it's like, it's very much like the break from childhood, the break of like what it was like before and after. And I think that's still a very fresh wound for a lot of people. And turning the mirror inwards and saying like, this isn't all cozy in here, is like, it makes people uncomfortable, because they're like, there's a bigger battle out there. And I think it's hard for people to hold both truths. I think it's hard for people to say, these problems have kind of the same pernicious root. These problems have the same toxicity at their heart, even though they express in very different ways.
I mean, here's the big thing that I've gloomed, just a lot of things, but I've kind of come to a summary on after reading psychology and sociology and everything. Humans do not like to have, and actually someone has said this already, humans do not like to have their belief system questioned. But you know what? We were given a brain to question. This is why we're here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pretty sure the goddess is in my ear going, yes, that's right. You know, we're here. Otherwise we wouldn't. We would just be like animals, you know, hoping that the rain brings food. I mean, we have a brain to decide what we're taught and whether it fits what we are. And apparently Alice Walker has a brain.
She got an extra dose of that. She got an extra dose of
another dimension or whatever. Yeah.
And steadfastness.
Oh yeah, one of my 11 books that I have here in my house of Alice Walker. I've read more than the 11. It's just in moving and stuff. I've lost a few. So this is from the New York Times, from book review of December 2018. I had it in one of the book. I outlined one little section here where they asked her, what moves you most in a book? she says, the witnessing of a great soul. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the last line is, in other words, the writer's courage. The writer's courage.
She had a lot of courage.
She was all courage.
Goosebumps.
And
All courage.
I read this and kind of got like a chill, because I think that I highlighted this because in my coming out of myself, I realized that that's where I wanted to be. And that's where I feel like I am. I'm not saying I can't be more or less there. I'm always looking to evolve myself, but I'm pretty much there. And I'm like, oh, wow, I think I need to send her flowers and chocolate.
I also had a Maya Angelou quote. I'm going to misremember it, but it's similar in that it's like, courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any of the other ones consistently. And like, I was thinking about that listening to the way Alice Walker talked about her own life and the sort of courage of her own convictions to do what she believed in, at great personal cost often.
Yeah, what was so amazing to me is watching
still human, you know, like she's still a human being behind that. Like, I am a pillar of literature, I'm Alice Walker, I'm a pillar of the civil rights movement, Alice Walker. But then we have this moment in the film that I thought was so beautiful, that like we kept seeing her in her garden, and we kept like breaking that what is it? It's not a veneer, but that sort of shell around her, that sort of the goddess on the idol pillar, like the pedestal. And instead she was human, and she was and I mean the best way her feet, she was one of us. Her feet were in the earth in the best way.
Eating her chickens.
Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, that was a human, and there was a human cost to the things you chose to do, and the things you chose to stand up for. Yeah, and she did.
Yeah, amazing to me when someone's willing to pay it. You know, I mean, it's that's one of the things that I thought stood out as an unspoken thing through this whole film, is her willingness to just do what she felt she needed to do that was right, without thinking about being great or not great or whatever. Just like, I'm doing this, and okay.
Yeah, and she paid the price, and then she would look back and not regret it either, is also a very unusual and admirable trait, to not say, I wish I could have done it differently. It's like, I did this, and this was the cost, and then I paid it, and then I kept going. Like,
yeah. Yeah, that curiosity kept her going. She went from one to the next, and she took it head on.
Maybe that's really what she got from her mom, right? Like, this is mine, and I'm gonna do it. That's the thread line, really, right? Back to the education question that I'm thinking from Joann.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what you say. You were talking about, like, someone's like, this is mine. I think that maybe that was that same resilience of spirit of like, this is mine, and no matter how many hits you take, you can't have it. I won't give it up.
So we got another question from the audience. Tara. Hi, Tara. Tara asks, do you think one person's story written today has the potential to influence as much as Alice Walker's has done? Do you think we can do that?
Always. I always believe we can do that.
I do. That's why when people talk about writing their lives, early in my career, 40, 50 years ago, when I was just starting to get into the writing, I used to interview writers, you know, like some of my heroes I'd get to interview. And then I started talking to other people, and I came to the conclusion, there is greatness in every single human being if you spend enough time talking to them. They've all had, I haven't met one yet to disprove me, they've all had a moment where there was something called on them that was outside of what they could possibly do, and they did it. Now, she did a million of them, but you know, when people talk about writing their lives, I'm always telling people they should, because the one thing I think that humans have continued to do is the curiosity about someone else's life, what it's like to be them. And I think without a question, you can't read anything about someone's life and not connect on some level that will change you. You may not know that change in the moment that you read it and watch it, but you will. So I do. As far as quantifying it, who knows? I mean, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think if you can connect with one reader, if you can connect with and ground a single person into your story, I think that is maybe not to the level of winning a Pulitzer Prize, but you know.
But some of those, like, some of those are also, yeah, like those are things that build astronomically on each other, right? Like, we don't always get to hit that hockey curve, but I always think to make one person feel seen when they were not seen, to feel like they are known when they felt unknown, to feel like maybe some piece of them isn't invisible. I mean, that's why I write. And that's what I keep a letter that a reader wrote by my desk that was like, I didn't know I could be South Asian and queer and be okay until I read a character who was ambitious and in love and South Asian, and it was okay. And it gave her peace. Yeah, exactly. I know, that's why I keep, because anytime I think, why am I doing this? I look at that letter and I'm like, that's why I do it, because someone said they felt like they could be okay. Not that they weren't going to keep working on it, not that they didn't have other things they needed to deal with, but that that their self was not something that they needed to punish themselves for the rest of their life. So yes, sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's all the way to a fishing village in Japan, right? We don't always get to pick that, but we do get to pick that courage that Linda brought up. We do get to pick what's ours, the way Joann brought up, and I think we do get to pick what matters to us and what we can put on that page and tell the truth about.
When I mentor young writers, and I don't mean age, I mean how long they've been writing, and I do a lot of it because I was mentored by some wonderful people. And when I mentor them, one of the biggest points for me is for them to write from their authentic voice, whether they ever show anybody that or not. You've got to go and dig in there. You've got to dig into all the things that hurt and make you happy and write from that. And then you can decide how much of it you're going to do. But when you read Alice Walker's work, you see that she's coming from there. She's not coming from anywhere else. And by writing authentically is how you are able to make an impression. And I have a rule, like, we are all born with the ticket that we got to pay, and that is to touch someone else's life, at least one. You do one, you're good to go. More gravy.
Yeah, but it also happened, I think, with Amanda Gorman with her poem and how that was passed. I mean, everybody was just all into her and that poem, and it made the rounds, and I mean, that's just one example of how you can touch someone or a whole
nation,
thousands of people.
A whole nation of someone. Yeah.
And I'm so sure she didn't wake up and say, I'm going to write poetry so I can do that. You can only just do what you can do. And as long as you're doing it authentically and doing it from your heart and soul, then whatever happens beyond that is just gravy. I'm so beyond happy with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet she was like, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say a true thing. I'm going to set out to do what I know I need to do in this poem. And
she did it.
Bless her, she did it. Right, it touched all of us, and it was
done. That's what Alice Walker has done with like 20 books.
Yeah,
I always say that you kind of can't write anything new. Like we've been humans for tens of thousands of years, and we're storytelling animals on some level. And we can argue if there's 7 templates or 10 templates or whatever, but what you see, how Linda, your voice, how you see the world, how you've moved through it, that's unique. No one else ever has that. No one else ever will have that. It's yours.
And somehow that's going to connect. And that's what I teach. That's what I work with authors with. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can do, but if you, that's where the juice is. That's where you start.
Yeah, I want to make you the best writer that you are, not like me, and not even like Alice Walker or Amanda Gorman, who are both brilliant and write beautiful, beautiful lyrical words. They're not mine.
Yeah. I have one more question, and then we'll wrap things up. But looking back over Alice's life, she found herself in a lot of hard situations, to put it mildly, right? Going to school was a form of rebellion, and protesting and marrying a white man also just that threatened her very personal safety. And she faced huge criticism about what she wrote, whether it was, The Color Purple, or later on when she told the stories that involved female genital mutilation. When you look at opportunities for the future, how do you think people can position themselves as artists, because we all are, right? To be as influential as Alice has been in her work. And from what I'm hearing, overwhelmingly, it is to be authentic and true and to tell the story that only you can tell, right? Aminah, that's what you were just saying. I mean, Joann, do you want to add anything to that? Is there anything we can do to be like Alice, really?
I mean, what I would say is create from your heart, write from your experiences and your imagination. I mean, you can write what has been and what you have seen and what you want to see. And as you said before, be authentic, be yourself, and write, because nobody can tell your story but you.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah,
the truth there. I would tell you real quickly that I was working with a young Black writer here in Tucson. Amazing, amazing, amazing poet. Oh, and we had a discussion about whether or not their work was going to help inspire other young Black. And I said, it can't help not to, because your work is so authentically you. It can't help. You don't have to be conscious of saying, I want that to happen. It's going to happen. So, again, just to back up what everyone is saying,
I would also just add, and this is probably tangential to those ideas, to create something in the world is usually because there's a core seed of dissatisfaction, right? Like I think I was saying what Joann said about creating what you wish you could see. I think we all do that, whether we're telling a story about the past, the present, or the future, whether we're speculating, whether we're writing historical fiction, whether we're saying here and now, we are dissatisfied and we have something to say and we have a story, and our voice, and we have to say it. And we know we can't shut up about it. We try sometimes we bury that story and we swallow it and we say, no, it's fine. But eventually you're going to have to admit that you want to tell that story and you haven't seen it and you want to see it. And that dissatisfaction is the beginning of that authenticity and that telling the truth.
And that's how things get changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Alice did it. And that's how anyone who's creating anything, or even I think everything is creative. So being a parent is creative. You're a parent and you commit to being conscious with children and allowing them to be themselves and finding where they need openings and more input, then that is being very creative.
Yeah, that totally sums things up. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you again to the Utah Film Center for allowing us to have this discussion and to show us this amazing film, which I had never seen before. And I was so excited that you were able to get it for us. So, and thank you to our audience for joining us and listening to us discuss this amazing woman and her life. So thank you again and have a good night.
Pleasure.